Hello, this is Patrick with New Jersey's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel. Today in the series of the 1961 Airstream Bambi renovation, I'm going to be replacing the original galvanized freshwater tank with a plastic style tank I ordered from Inca Plastics. Just taking a little break from the van life tours for the time being because of the global epidemic, but it's a great time for me to stay at home and work on the Bambi project, so join me. So before I get started tearing it all apart, let me walk you through with what the freshwater tank looks like. This one's approximately 20 gallons. It's incaplastics.com or toyhaulertanks.com. And I told them where I wanted the vent, the freshwater fill, the pickup tube for the freshwater pump, the water pump, and the drain. There's got to be a low point drain so you can drain it down for winterization or you're not using it. And it came shipped UPS, no packaging, no wrapping, just they taped the packing slip to it. So it did get a little scratched, but I guess that's what they do. So let me just move this over so I can walk you through what this tank that's here already is. So this is a front lounge, and I'm going to be building a plywood bench bottom and a back with a hinge, and I'll have cushions on top of it. But this is where most RV manufacturers are going to hide their freshwater tanks unless they're underneath the chassis. This trailer has such a low profile that the water tank's in the body and the waste tank is in the body, which is great because it's also heated by the furnace if you're doing some cold weather camping. So what I have to do first is remove this bench top here, and then what I'm going to do is remove the original water pump. Now this is not a 12 volt demand pump that you would see on a current RV. It is an air compressor, and what it would do would pressurize the air inside the tank here, and that was what would give you water pressure. And you could either do it by the 12 volt DC, where there was a switch up here, or there's a Schrader valve on the outside. You could pump it with an air pump, a hand pump. So I'm going to take the pump out and undo the lines here. Then I'm going to take the filler neck out, and then there's some strapping here I have to remove, and then there's some brackets underneath I'll have to remove. And then I'm going to put the new tank, and I'm just mocking it up. I'm not permanently installing it, because I'm going to be taking the inside of the trailer apart. So I just want to get everything mocked up as best as I can. I'm also going to have to remove these screws for this hingeable lift up lid here for the front bench. And on the outside, I'm going to have to remove this filler neck, this flange here, and I'm going to put a stainless steel door that opens with a lock and key and a regular fill. So I'm going to have to cut the body open a little bit more. So first, I'm going to remove all the screws here, and they're all flathead screws, so you got to line everything up perfectly. It's not like a Phillips head. I'm going to save these screws because I want to use them over again. This one's stripped. It did come out. Okay, now this bench could come out. And it already came apart partially. It hasn't been screwed together well. Okay, so what I did was I made sure there was no air left in this system. I didn't want to undo this line and have compressed air inside here blow up. So I did that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to soak this fitting with some PB Blaster so that comes off. try not to spray too much. Let that soak a little bit because I don't want it all over the walls and on the floor. Pull these drawers out. I have a nice area to work here. So what I'm going to do first is there's no power hooked up in this trailer. There's no battery or electric hooked up currently. So I'm just going to snip the wires for the water pump. And this one's just a ground. Now the pump is freed up on that portion of it. Now I'm going to try to cut these little straps here. Okay, that's one out. This one's loose, but still needs to be cut. Back outside, I gotta remove this cap so I can remove the pipe from behind it. Now, I tried to do it by hand, it's been on there forever, so I gotta use this plumbing tool here. Slip it over. And you want to make sure the side that you're trying to push off of has these teeth here. And you got to cinch it nice and tight first. There we go. Oh God, it's tight. Okay. Now I could take it off by hand. And this is the valve that you'd use to compress the air inside the tank. But pretty cool hardware. Still got some moisture in it. And there's the filler neck that goes into the tank. Now we're going to run back inside. And I got to take this pipe off here, which I just soaked with PB Blaster just a few moments ago, so let's see if that comes loose. But it needs some persuasion, so I gotta use this. I'm gonna stick that on, and you want to make sure it bites. I'm thinking I probably should have left the tank strapped in first, because now that I'm pushing on it, the tank's kind of lifting up. So let me just give this some more persuasion here. Oh, got it to move. Jump back outside and get it the rest of the way using the strap. Okay, it's not going to go all the way out because there's that nipple on the end, so we got to go back inside. You can see it's sitting up here. We got to pull it back down. These teeth are very, very sharp. There we go. You can see all the rust in here. The inside of the tank is even worse. That's why you don't want to reuse these old tanks. Now that is off the tank is almost free except for the fitting where the water pump goes into the tank. To remove that fitting, I'll take a regular crescent wrench. That was pretty loose already. I can pretty much do it by hand. Okay, so now I got to take this water pump out. You can see there's some flathead screws here. And it looks like my screw gun's not going to fit, so I'm just going to grab a long screwdriver. And these are just screwed right into the plywood floor, so they're coming out pretty easily. Okay, that's free. I'm just going to free up this line here. Just undo the fitting at the front. And there is a vintage air compressor water pump for an RV. You can see there's all rubber pieces here. This pump wasn't bolted directly to the floor. It had rubber grommets that keep it from vibrating and making noise inside. So now that we got the pump out of the way, I'm going to save this, by the way. These are pretty collectible. Now I could get the water tank out completely. This thing's going to be heavy. Straps are free. Oh, yeah, that's a heavy one. So that's where the new freshwater tank drain's going to be, but it's going to be much smaller. So I'm going to have to make some type of patch there so rodents don't come through. And you can see what was living underneath this tank. Here's some of those old screws I like to save. Let me get rid of this. I'm going to clean this area up, and then I'm going to lay down the new freshwater tank. I got to take these bottom brackets out first. I wrestled the tank out for some time. Now I can get rid of these bottom brackets, and they're just a whole bunch of flathead screws. You can see the original markings from Airstream where they located the tank back in 1961. All this here is the ash from the fire that was in here at one point. Some acorns in here too. You can tell that there were some critters in here at one point. There we go. Alright, let me clean this area up and we'll put that tank in. Now that the area is all cleaned up, I can put the freshwater tank in. And I want to make sure that I have the correct side. This is where the water fill and the vent and the water pump feed is going to be. Okay. That's where it's going to sit. Now this drawer slide's not going to be here because the battery charger, the fuses, the breakers are all going to be in that location. But I have it wedged up against the front blocks for the front lounge. And I measured very carefully, but I was not able to get the height I wanted. There's a minimum requirements for the height. So I'm going to use a filler board. It's going to go there. And then the lounge, I'm going to rebuild it. It's going to sit on top of the tank. You can see I'm going to get rid of that rounded part where the old tank was. I'm going to redo all these boards. And then I'm going to eliminate the drawer brake. This has a drawer brake that you can fold down when you're in transport. It lowers the lounge and acts as a brake so the drawers don't slide out. I'm going to be adding modern hardware onto the drawers, so I don't need the drawer brake anymore. So when I redo the front here, that's no longer going to hinge down. So I'm going to have a higher height lounge in the front than on the side by design. So you can see how it sits in here. Now I have to mark out where the freshwater fill is going to be. And you can see the marking here where the edge of the lounge is going to be. So there's going to be a backrest here. So I could have the fill spout come this way and around right into the hole here on the side. And the vent as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out where the water pump plumbing is going to be and rough it in just so I could take some measurements. It's all going to be 1/2 inch PEX tubing. And I have a threaded nipple here with a bar bend. This is going to have Teflon tape, but this is going to be threaded into the tank nice and tight. Then I'm going to have a filter for the water pump, and you got to pay attention to the flow. So I'm going to use all 1/2 inch PEX here. That's going to go just like that. And then, since the drawer comes into about here, I can't put the water pump here. It's got to go into this back area. I don't want it close to the wall. I don't want it rubbing anything. So I created a curve in the PEX using this. Okay. Now I could take my mock water pump, lay that in place. See if all the fittings line up. This will be easier once everything's tightened. Right now I'm just slipping them in. Okay. So it's going to be laid out just like that. The water pump's not touching the tank. It's not touching the filter. I can still get the fittings off. Okay, now I made up another piece. It's going to come around and hook into the pump here. There we go. And then since the battery is going to be here on the floor, to use most of the space, I'm going to run along the top of the tank over to this side, and I'm going to have an elbow, and then it's going to bring the water to the back of the Airstream right to where the Truma is, the faucets, etc. And then this is going to be the low point drain for the water lines on this side of the trailer. And I'm going to drill a hole in the floor. So you can see the whole layout. But once I tighten all these fittings, it'll be nice and straight and even. And then I'll use 12 volt right here. And I'll wire in a pump switch in the original location. But I am going to replace these panels because they're all buckled from the fire. Now what I have to do is go outside and measure, because I have to cut in the water connection, the water fill, the potable water door into this location here. So the fill tube, which is an inch and a quarter, come out of here and go right into the side of the tank, and the vent tube can come out of here and go right out through the door. on the outside, I got to remove this flange. It's got 3 flathead screws on it. I'm going to save all these parts. You never know if someone's going to want them for another project. And then what I'm going to do when I get this off, I got to feel around. I got to look for ribs. I don't want to cut a hole in a rib when I'm cutting in the freshwater door. And I don't want to cut any wires, so I have to be mindful of other things that might be behind here. It's been on for a long time. You can see they cut the hole. It's 2 layers aluminum here, and like I thought, there's wires right behind it. So I'm gonna have to get these out of the way. So I gotta go back inside, and there's an access panel. As you can see, I taped for now the water line in, and I added the tank drain that's going to have an elbow that goes through the floor here, and a low point drain for the water line that's going to have an elbow that goes through the line here. It uses a lot of PEX fittings, elbows, T's, shut-off valves, and the clamps to do this job. So I'm going to take this cover off, and I'll show you what's inside. Now that I have the cover off, I can see what's inside. Got some fiberglass insulation. Just gonna tuck that out of the way. Alright, so this is where the trailer 7-way plug cuts into the body. So we definitely don't want to cut this, but this is good for future reference if I ever want to redo or replace the trailer 7-way. So this goes all to the trailer lights, the trailer brakes. So we definitely don't want to cut into any of these, so I'm going to have to tuck them out of the way completely. Below that you can see a structural rib support that we don't want to cut through. And there's another rib off to the side. On this side, we're pretty clear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out and I'm going to cut the hole. Alright, so I measured out. I can't go at 2.5 inches, there's a rib here. At 2 1/4 there's a rib here. And at 2 inches there's a rib. This way I got more than 3 inches. This is the freshwater tank fill. And it's got the potable fill and a little vent. On the back side, this is the top and this is the bottom. That's where the inlet tube's going to clamp on, and that's where the vent tube's going to clamp on. If I stick it in the original hole, you can see it's bigger than the hole, which is good. But now I got to measure appropriately, so when I inset this into the body, there's no gaps and I don't hit any ribs. And I want to make sure it's square too. So it looks like what I have to do first is notch out a spot for the vent so I can line it up so it sits flush and I can trace the outline of the box. Using some snips and to make sure I'm clear of the wires, I'm just going to cut out the little notch for the vent for the time being so I can let it sit flush so I can then trace the outline of the box. This stuff's razor sharp, so just be careful. Okay, there's the part that we have to line up and put inside. Alright, it's pretty close. Just have to get rid of some of this. Now I could square it up and trace the outline of the box. I'm going to square it up to the battery box here. And there's going to be a little bit of play left. And to start, I'm only going to cut 2 of the sides. So I'm going to cut into the right. Get a nice bite there. It's difficult. I mean, it is aluminum. It's easy to cut, but I'm biting through 2 layers here. I'm just being mindful. I'm not cutting through any wires behind it. It's always good not to cut too much. See, I overcut this little corner a little bit. It is what it is, but you don't want to cut the hole way too big and then have gaps and water leak potential. Perfect. Using a piece of scrap hardwood and a ball peen hammer, I could get in enough just for the edge to flatten it up. Now that the hole's all cleaned up, I could apply some putty tape here. And I want to get it really tight into this edge. Kind of bend it over, fold it over. Let's try it again. So I'm going to get this all the way around, we're going to put it in. Now that I have the tape all the way around, I just cut any of the excess. I left a little bit of a roll on the edge so it seals nice and tight. I'm going to stick it with the bottom part down. Line it up on the inside. Get it nice and tight to the body. Okay. Now what I want to do is make sure it's nice and square. I'm going to open it up, and it comes with self-tapping screws. Now I know what's behind here already, so I know the wires aren't flush up against the body, so I'm not going to drill into them. I don't want to go too tight with these because I don't want to strip out the hole. I could always go back later and add rivets and add more screw holes to make it a lot tighter. So I'm working from the top down. And when the sun's, beating on this, it's getting so gooey. So I'm going to let it ooze out, and then I'll come back with a knife, cut it, and I should be able to torque these screws down some more. Give a nice weather-tight seal. This does come with a gasket. I'm not using this, so I'm using the putty tape. The most important thing is this is aluminum, this is stainless steel, to keep them separated, and don't let them touch because you'll get some corrosion there. And I can lock that up. Let's take a walk around inside and see what it looks like inside the trailer. Alright, inside the trailer you can see the 7-way wiring harness is still intact. I'm just going to tuck that off to the side. We'll pull the insulation back out later and make sure this area is fully insulated. And this is the interior cover. So you can see that lines up perfectly with the old one. And what I might do is use the flange that was outside on the inside to trim out the hole a little bit better. But what happens from here, we're going to put the flexible hose, tighten that nice and tight, and then it's going to come pretty sharp turn. This stuff doesn't kink. And we're going to make another turn here. And this is where the fill for the freshwater tank is. And it won't interrupt the lounge seat, and it will allow air to flow in properly. In addition to that, we're going to put the vent tube on, and that screws in here. Again, I'm just mocking this up. I'll use all the proper Teflon tape when the final install is done. We'll take our vent tube. Now this could kink, so you got to be careful with it, but they do sell a spring you can put inside. I'll prevent it from kinking. And this will hook up just like that. So pretty much that's it. If you want to take a look, freshwater tank fill into the hole in the side. We got the water pump feed siphoning from the freshwater tank through a filter. We want to make sure we're mindful of the direction of the filter around into the feed side of the water pump. There's also direction on the pump too, and it's going to come out over the battery and converter system around to this side of the trailer, and then it's going to feed all the appliances, toilet, and then to drain the freshwater tank down, we're going to have a drain here on the side. It's going to go through the floor, and a low point drain for this side plumbing line is going to be in the same spot as well. Well, this is Patrick with New Jersey's Outdoor Adventures YouTube channel. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like this video, comment, share, subscribe. I'd love it, and we'll see you soon.